Welcome to the Normal People Fitness Podcast. My name is Steve Marsden, and we're going to talk about getting fit, getting healthy, feeling good, while eating the things you want to eat and doing the things you want to do. Hello, welcome to the Normal People Fitness Podcast. My name's Steve Marsden. If you don't know who I am, I'm a personal trainer and I own a gym. I run a gym in a place called Livingston in Scotland. That's between Edinburgh and Glasgow. For you ecosophiles. I've made that word up, but hey, it's all okay. Today, we're going to talk about diet. What we shove in our head holes. Diet's really hard, and our relationship with our own bodies, our relationship with food is a very complex one. So hopefully what I can do today is try and simplify a lot of complex information that's out there. Because I think that a lot of people find information from places that have an agenda about that information. For example, the media. Let's say a newspaper. We see, here's a diet where you can lose a stone in a day. The caveat to that is probably one person lost a stone in a day and everybody else died. There's a lot of information out there. A lot of it's complex. So hopefully what I can do is teach you the principles of food, of diet, of very, very simple metabolism, and how you can apply it to yourself and create a structure for yourself. Also going to go into not just what we should eat, and I hate the word should, but what we should eat, but also why we eat it, because that's just as important. You may not be hungry, but you may still eat, and that is okay-ish, depending on what outcome you like. But yeah, we eat for different reasons. Going to talk about creating success. Success is something that a lot of people have not had. If you think about January, it's a bit of a cliche that in January everybody goes on a diet and no one sticks to it. And I know that if, let's say you were to put your money in a business every single year and it was the same business, and every year that business was to fail, you probably wouldn't put your money in that business again. So I completely understand why people do not like to go on diets. They don't like to go to the gym, because every January they put all their time, energy and money into a diet or exercise, and they fall off the wagon. They fail. And I see why that puts people off, because they've just created this cycle of failure. So we're going to talk about how we create success. And also we're going to talk about what's achievable in terms of results. We have a bit of a skewed perception of the world, in terms of my world at least. If you think about, in the 90s when I grew up, in the 2000s it was magazines, and it was losing a stone in 4 days with one simple enema, or on Instagram as it is nowadays. It's rife, and most of these pictures are crazy angles, Photoshop, and a lot of that is unattainable for a normal person without a suite of Adobe Photoshop packages. So we're going to talk about what's achievable, what's not, and for a lot of people, the happiness does not come with losing a specific number or looking like a specific celebrity or Instagram celebrity. You take Instagram away and you're not a celebrity anymore. But yes, the happiness comes with being in control of the process, feeling like you actually know what you're doing. And like I've said before, motivation ebbs and flows. And there's going to be times where you know what to do. You know how to do it. You know exactly what you need to do, but you just don't want to do it. But knowing that you have the control over that process, you know exactly what you need to do, how to do it, is very, very powerful. So, without further ado, let's talk about it. So, what is achievable for the average person? This will differ. It depends on what you want. It depends on how fast you want it. And it depends where you're starting from. Let's say you have a wedding in a year's time. We've got a lot of time there to not only help you, let's say, lose weight, but also change the composition of your body. So we lose a little bit of fat and we put on a little bit of muscle, and we can pace ourselves. I train a lot of brides or brides-to-be, And what we usually do is we go fast at the start, we then maintain a little bit more of a push, and then we maintain, because we have to think about dress fittings, etc. So it's not as clear cut as, say, just losing £2 a week. Guidelines would say that £2 a week is the upper end of achievable. Anything faster than that, and you might be losing a little bit too much muscle mass compared to fat mass. Equally, if it's not sustainable, you will fall off the wagon. And I hear it time and time again that when people do things that aren't very sustainable, let's say in January as an example, where they go to the gym 18 times a day and eat salads, then they can put more weight on once they've fallen off the wagon back. So our aim is not just for the initial result, that 1 stone off, but it's to keep it off as well. Now, unfortunately, with the rise of social media, it has skewed people's expectations of results, and largely this is due to companies, media outlets, even personal trainers and gyms themselves giving a false narrative to how long things take. Now, don't get me wrong, you can get quick results. You can get quick changes. You can do a lot in, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. However, can you maintain that result after that? And the more extreme you are at the front end, the more extreme you have to be to maintain it. And a lot of people will go hell for leather. They might do a 6-week challenge. They might lose a lot of weight, lose a lot of fat, look completely different. But then there is this rebound afterwards. And I would prefer, for a lot of the normal people listening to this who want long-term results that they can maintain, to go a bit slower. That's okay. However, what has happened, and there is a very, very famous transformation gym around the world, they will put pictures up of their 1% of members, of clients who make these crazy transformations, when really the real results for the 99% of people aren't that achievable. So what can you achieve? I think people underestimate what they can achieve in a year while completely overestimating what they can achieve in 1 month. It's very, very easy to lose a dress size in a couple of months. It requires, yes, a little bit of structure, a little bit of discipline, working out, a little bit of diet intervention, but largely you can live a 90% normal life while getting that result. You'll also see benefits like mental health will improve. You'll get fitter. You won't be out of breath when you go up the stairs. Clothes will fit better all over. And that's what I'm trying to get across in this podcast, is that yes, you may want it all now. You may want extreme results now, but that requires extreme effort. And if you have kids, if you have a social life, if you have a stressful job or a job that requires a lot of work, then going slower might be a little bit better. But it is up to you. Go back to the getting back in the gym, set a goal, and then work towards it. If it happens quickly, great. If it happens not as quick as you would like, great. But I promise you, with a year of application, with a year of 80% effort, you'll get some great results. And a year of 80% is better than 2 weeks of 100. So how does food work and our diet work in terms of changing our bodies the way we want our bodies to change? I am mainly talking to people who maybe want to lose a bit of weight, get fit, healthy. Some people want to put on weight, and all these principles apply just the opposite way, and I will caveat that as we go along. But for the most people who step foot in my gym, who listen to this podcast, it is about losing a little bit of fat, looking better. And that better, obviously, that's a very, very subjective thing, but there wants to be improvement in body composition. That's how I'm defining this. So first thing I'm going to talk about is calories. A lot of people cringe when I say calories. Calories are just a unit of energy. They're like Celsius, they're like kilograms, pounds. They're just a way of measuring something. The technical definition of a calorie is the amount of energy needed to heat, I think it's a litre of water up by 1 degree Celsius. So really, it's not something that should be emotional, but it is for people. And food is very, very emotional for people. So when I talk about calories, when I talk about this, I'm talking about it from quite an objective unit of measurement point of view. And I don't mean to dismiss the emotional side of it. We will get onto that later. But please, if you could indulge me in my talk of calories. So calories is the way we measure a unit of energy. And when we eat food, we break that down into those units of energy. And the calorie just measures how much energy is in food. So I often refer to food as energy. Now, if we do not use that energy from the food after we've converted it into energy, we store it as body fat. Because a long, long time ago, our ancestors, food was very, very scarce. Up until, about probably 75 years ago. 75 years ago is taking us up to World War II. Food was very, very scarce. So our bodies adapted and became very, very good at keeping us warm, protecting us, giving us a layer of fat that protected us from being attacked by woolly mammoths. And no, woolly mammoths probably vegetarian. They wouldn't attack a human, I don't think. Maybe they would. I don't know. Saber-toothed tigers, pirates, whatever the threat of the day was. I wasn't there. One day I hope there is some virtual reality that allows me to go back in time and protect myself. I've got a nice spare tire from lockdown that needs to getting rid of. But yes, if we do not use that energy, we store it as body fat. And inversely, if you were trying to put some weight on, a lot of people who struggle to put weight on, they use more energy than they actually consume. So this is what's called energy balance. And if we want to lose weight, we need to use more energy than we consume. Sounds very simple, doesn't it? Yes. Well, it's not in practice. It's not. I like people, and I'll get onto this soon, to track their calories to see how much objective energy they are eating. I think that practice is very good because it gives you an objective view of the amount you're eating, what food's good, what foods are bad from that energy perspective. And it will give you some clarity. A lot like if you listened to the Getting Back in the Gym podcast, it gives you clarity a little bit like if you were to show someone your finance. If you were to show an expert in money your finances, they would need to see what you're spending your money on. This is the same thing. What we put in our mouth, we need to measure it. The other thing I want to talk about is macronutrients. There are 3. At the moment, science says there are 3. First one, carbohydrates. Carbohydrates give us energy. And especially in the 90s, carbohydrates were vilified. Because I think that a lot of the tasty foods like pizza, crisps, chocolate, anything with sugar in, it's very, very easy to overeat. A lot of people's hyperpalatable food, and I'll go on to that later, a lot of people's tasty food, mine is cheese actually, but it is a carbohydrate. It's very, very easy to overeat them, and therefore people put on weight. A lot of people, when they get rid of carbs, they end up feeling very, very terrible because they've got no energy. One of my friends likened this to, let's say your body is a Ferrari. Mine's more of a Corsa, but let's say your body was a Ferrari. It's like taking the petrol out of the car. Yes, the car is lighter, but all the amazing things you can do with that car or your body cannot be done because there's just no energy going to them. Next macronutrient is protein. Protein. I mentioned this and people are like, oh, should I have a protein shake here? And no, you don't need protein shakes. Don't need protein shakes. We get protein from, I call it anything with a face, except potato smileys. But anything that used to run, grow, or swim, when it was alive, has some protein in. Now, your runners and your swimmers are much, much more densely packed with protein. So if you think along the lines of animals, so beef, pork, poultry. I'm a vegetarian, so when it comes to like banging off animals that are meat, it's hard for me. Yes. Also, things like, I eat a lot of corn. You have some dairy products, eggs, a lot of protein. Protein is the most expensive macronutrient. If you go to the shops, this is the thing that will cost you money. but it does cost money to grow a pig or a cow or an egg or a chicken. That's what lays eggs, isn't it? The third macronutrient is fat. Fat. Now, dietary fat is very, very different from the fat that we hold upon our bodies. And I think that the naming of fat has confused a lot of people into what makes you fat. We need fats. They transport nutrients from cell to cell within our body, which is really important. They also keep our brain healthy, our immune system healthy. They're really, really good for you. And then, as well as the macros, we have micronutrients. So if macronutrients are the big ones, micronutrients are the little ones. These are your vitamins, your minerals. Many of these we do not get in our diet anymore. Soil is terribly, terribly low quality compared to when Britain was a farming land. And therefore, this is where I do take supplements. I take vitamin D. I live in Scotland. The sun is very, very rare here, both the newspaper and the large gaseous bubble in the sky. I also take a multivitamin to cover my bases. As I said, I am vegetarian, therefore I'm probably deficient in some things. It just covers my basis. Just really, really does. I have my vitamins next to my coffee machine. So in the morning, I make a coffee, see my vitamins, I think, I should take one of those. One time, my girlfriend was tidying the house, and she likes to put things away. And if things are put away, I don't remember. So, yes, little tip there for your vitamins. Now, we've gone over a little bit of food. We need to create a calorie deficit. We can measure how many calories in a certain thing. But where the macros come into this, the macronutrients, is our body composition, how much muscle compared to fat we have, can be affected by how much protein, carbs, and fats we eat, the ratios we eat them within our diet. What has become popular over the last 10 years, especially within my world, is a diet called If It Fits Your Macros, IIFYM for short, even though I think it's exactly the same amount of syllables. Doesn't speed up the speaking of it, maybe with the typing. A lot of people type these days. But If It Fits Your Macros is a diet that a lot of personal trainers give to their clients. Listen, it works. It really works, because what you're essentially doing with If It Fits Your Macros is you are setting a calorie goal. And your objective is to stay below this calorie goal. Because if you stay below this, you are then eating less than you burn. Yep. Now, within this, what is important for body composition and for a lot of people is not just to lose weight for weight's sake, because then if our calorie deficit is far, far too big, we lose a lot of muscle and we end up looking quite soft, unathletic, and it's not the look that a lot of people I train at least want to get. So what we need to do is we need to not only just set the calorie goal, but eat enough protein to maintain our muscle mass. I do talk about this in the Getting Back to the Gym podcast. It is podcast number 1. If you do want to listen to that, you can go back. But calorie deficits are absolutely essential for hitting our goals. And no matter what diet we look at, every successful diet has a sustainable calorie deficit, even unsustainable in some cases. So I'm just going to talk very, very briefly about some of the diets that you may have heard of that have a calorie deficit. So I'm going to start with Slimming World. A lot of personal trainers don't like Slimming World. I think that there are obvious drawbacks, there are obvious pros, but it is people's first foray into dealing with some of the issues of food. And the way that Slimming World imposed a calorie deficit, it was something called sins. I don't like the connotation of the word sins. I think that people punish themselves enough, and to call certain foods sins and certain foods not, it's a little bit thing. It's a little bit, I don't know, bad connotations. But Slimming World is good because what happens is we control our intake, our eating through restricting certain foods that we can overeat. So generally, most of the foods with a lot of sins are ones that could be deemed to be bad for you or less nutritious. Where I'm not a fan of Slimming World, and this is where my philosophy on diet is, you want something that's more like a spectrum rather than an on and off switch. A lot of people who do Slimming World see Slimming World as on or off. So there isn't really a protocol or a structure when you go out for an amazing dinner, other than don't eat too many sins. And I do thoroughly believe that people should be able to have a good time. The other thing is this unlimited pasta business. For a lot of people, their pasta intake, I mean, that's absolutely crazy. I bloody love pasta. I can't stop eating it. I can have 2,000 calories of pasta just in one dish because I am a greedy mofo. So it does overlook people's personal preference when it comes to food. Other diets, let's go keto. Keto, again, what you do is you cut out carbohydrates. You fill your diet with fats and protein. There's nothing wrong with that because I would say that in the Western world, our diets are probably 70-80% of carbohydrates across the board. So by removing that 70-80%, we're just eating less. And then that protein helps us maintain muscle mass. I don't really advise keto for most normal people because firstly, it's very expensive. As I said, protein is the most expensive macronutrient, is very expensive. It is also hard in social situations to adhere to. It's hard when maybe, let's say you're driving a lot or you're traveling. Not many airport shops have keto available snacks and stuff. So you have to either be very, very, very prepared, or again, you fail that diet. And a lot of people go on and off of keto. So I like a diet to be able to sort of flip in and out of, say, more strict and less strict, depending on your schedule and your personal circumstances. But a calorie deficit has to be created. Now, if you would like me to do an actual episode on any diet protocols you may have done, sort of doing the pros and cons, giving you quite a balanced view and my opinion, I am biased about things, then please email me at steve@stevemarsdenfitness.com. I think the aim and the objective that I try to do with my members at Steve Marsden Fitness, my gym, is we're trying to get a calorie deficit, but we're trying to balance it with not just good nutrition, so making sure that we do eat healthy, nutritious foods with lots of micronutrients in, but we also balance it with our social lives to make sure that we don't have to sacrifice or appear like that weird person who brings Tupperware to a restaurant. We need to balance that, and we also have to balance psychological ease. So I do advocate that most people, you build in a little bit of a treat, a pizza night, a burger night, something that allows you to go, and it's not just suffer, because all the diet stuff can be done without suffering. And that brings me on nicely to why we eat. And many of you may be thinking, Stephen, we eat because we're hungry. But I think that a lot of people don't. A lot of people not only because they're hungry, and hunger is shouted at us from our bodies by something, leptin and ghrelin, and the relationship between those. But in the Western world, especially because of all the distractions, because of how our lives work around devices, we sometimes don't hear that relationship between leptin and ghrelin shouting at us how we should. So a lot of the time we end up eating for more reasons than just being hungry, and some of those could be because we're bored. I know that especially during the coronavirus lockdown, when I've been in the house, I've been bored and I've just gone and I've opened the fridge, see what was in there, and if there was something I liked, I ate it. Sometimes it is a snack cupboard. I talk about this a lot. But we can eat because we're bored. We also can eat when we're stressed, when we're emotional. I've dealt with a lot of emotional eating from members at my gym. And it's just, I think it is a response. Eating makes us feel good. And it is a response when we don't feel good to make us feel good. And that can, unfortunately, snowball. So this is something we have to address when we are thinking about diet, because in my opinion, it would be a hell of a lot easier if everybody just ate for function, if everybody ate because that's what we should do. We eat when we're hungry, we have nutritious food, bang. But that's not how the world works. That's not how we work. So as well as creating psychological ease in terms of something we look forward to like a treat, We have to identify why we're eating and in what situations we're eating it. And this is why I think tracking our diets is very, very important. Some of you may have rolled your eyes there, but by tracking, what that does is it brings some consciousness into what we're eating. We eat a lot of foods subconsciously. We habitualize it. I actually asked, there was a person that I trained years ago now, and they weren't losing any weight. That was their goal. That was their objective. They weren't losing any weight. So I asked them to do a food diary just over the weekend, because they had told me that, listen, I think my work's all right because we're quite restrictive there. So I asked them to do it. And no word of a lie, this person was having 8 slices of bread and butter on a Saturday and Sunday as they were waiting for things, or when they were bored, or when they were doing it. And those 8 slices of bread and butter, I mean, that's an extra 3,000 calories. If you're having 16 slices in a weekend, that's an absolutely crazy amount of extra food to eat that they'd completely forgotten about. And it was because it was so habitual for them to just go to the cupboard, get some bread, stick it in a toaster, look at their phone, bang, eat it. So there may be foods that you're eating that are habitual that you don't really know you're eating it. Also, the reason why I like tracking is there may be foods that you think are healthy, or inversely unhealthy, that may not be. And by tracking calories as that objective measurement of energy that I talked about earlier, we can find out exactly where that food sits, where that food lies. So tracking our food for a week is something that I like people to do. Now, there are a few ways to track. If you are old school, you can use a pen and paper. If you are using a pen and paper, we want to get as much information down as possible, i.e. Monday, 8 a.m., toast with butter and cup of tea. Now, I would say that how many slices is it? What type of bread it is? What type of butter is it? In your tea, are you having sugar? So how can we be a little bit more specific to build in information around that? Very, very important that you do put your drinks in there. Lattes, I'm going to go to lattes. I drink lattes myself, but I try and fit them into my diet. If you're having a latte with lots of milk and sugar and also syrup, that can add up. And if you think that maybe a latte is 300 calories, if you are a 5'5" woman who is trying to lose some weight, and you're having 2-3 lattes a day, that can be nearly half your food intake gone on a latte. That, to be honest, that's a very, very easy switch to make, where we can go towards our goals, but you still get that psychological hit of having a coffee in the morning. So yes, pen and paper, doing a food diary. We want to do this. If you can jot down by looking at, say, the back of a packet. I like people to weigh their food out when they track. A lot of people do not have any idea what a portion is. 2 examples are used with this. Cereal. If you had Frosties, if you pour out 30 grams, it's about 5 Frosties. You're going to be severely disappointed. But in the past, if you hadn't have weighed that portion out, you may have thought, oh, it's only 100 calories. Really, it's 500 calories. And that's only identified through weighing your food out and tracking. You do not need to do this forever. It is just an exercise so we identify exactly what we're eating, how much we're eating, and then we can adjust from there. Cheese is also a bit of a culprit. If you grate cheese, please weigh it out. This is something, 30 grams of cheese. There's not much cheese in my opinion, but I bloody love cheese. Yes, weigh food out. And then when you have pen and paper, I also think it's a good exercise to identify how you felt before or after eating it, whether that is emotionally or physically. The reason why this is important, because let's say you get your food diary out and you jot down packet of crisps or packet of party rings, mini party rings. If we can identify the mood you were in, it also ticks that box of, were you eating this when you were hungry, or is it a response to something? Is it because you were emotional? So it really, really does help. A note on this, actually, I mean, this is, it's hard. It can be very, very hard for a person to share this information about how you feel and then what your response was to it. I think a lot of people feel or can feel shame and embarrassment about how they eat. But this is normal. Like, this is human beings in the 21st century. This is very, very normal. So please, 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 if you are working with someone like myself, just trust us. We don't judge. We don't judge at all. To be honest, I mean, I trained someone who was having 8 takeaways a week. We cut them down to 5 takeaways a week, and they lost a stone. Like, all we want to do is get you to where you want to be, and we understand that there's going to be some stuff you're good at and some stuff that needs improvement. That's it. The other way to track, if you're a tech head or you have a mobile phone, is using MyFitnessPal. I like the MyFitnessPal app. For those of you who don't know, it is a big database of foods that are already in there. They have their calories, protein, fats, carbs, and micronutrients attached to them. So all you need to do is scan a food in, measure out the portion, and then it's there for you. And then it creates nice graphs and nice usable information that people like me can geek out over and create a plan. If you are using MyFitnessPal, please weigh out your portions. It will tell you what you're overeating, what you're not overeating, and then we can create a plan from there. So, when we have this information, there's a few things that I look for when I'm dealing with someone. The first thing is overall in a week, how many calories are they eating? This is important information because I will always assume that is the amount of calories it takes to keep them the same as they are now. In reality, though, when people track their food, they generally start to make a little bit better choices. But by assuming that's what will keep them the same, it just means that we get a little bit out of it. So I look at how many calories they're eating in a week overall. Is it a crazy amount for someone like that? Does it match up with their job? Is there discrepancies in the information? I sometimes get people who might put a little bit less food on their food diary because they're a little bit embarrassed. That's okay. We just have to deal with that as it comes. But once we have ascertained how much they're eating, I like to look at, right, are they eating more on different days? And if so, why? So, for example, let's call them Billy. Billy works a 9-to-5 job Monday to Friday. And most of his calories are eaten Friday, Saturday, and Sunday when he is socializing or on his weekends. And that's what Billy likes. That's how his life works. So when we are creating a diet for Billy, what we would then do is make sure that of those weekly calories, let's say he gets 14,000 a week, we would make sure the majority, let's say 8,000, were at the back end of the week rather than the front end of the week. That is just an example of how I would structure it for someone's social life. Please don't take that 14,000 number as golden. It depends, obviously. Then I look at, in terms of the amount of calories he's eating, when he is eating them, is there anything there that jumps out at me in terms of meals? So I eat the majority of my food at night time because I like it. I think it's easier to eat later on in the day. I look forward to a treat in the end of the day. But what I then do is make sure that I'm not eating that much in the morning, in the afternoon for lunch. It means I can be hungry sometimes and I have to deal with that, but that's what I like. That's my personal preference. From there, we then look at the ratios of macronutrients, so protein, fats, and carbs. Is it particularly high in one or another? Are there foods that he is eating that we could just switch to get a better macronutrient profile? Because with our macronutrient profile, that's what changes our body composition. I would estimate of the food diaries that I've seen that around 70% of what people are eating is carbohydrate. So can we just get a little bit more protein in while staying under our calorie allowances? This is essential. Like, can we improve the overall composition of someone's diet while hitting our goals and creating that psychological ease? Generally, the answer is yes. It just takes a little bit of work. And then from there, it is all about creating an actionable plan. Now, depending on Billy's goal, let's say Billy wants to go do this quickly, I might take 15% off the number that he presents to me within his food diary, that weekly number. So if he's eating 21,000 calories in a week, I'll take 15% off that. If he has quite a lot, like a stressful project coming up, or wants to go slower for whatever reason, We might take 7.5%, 10% off, 5% off, depending. This is a conversation. And then what we do is we create that plan and we execute it. Now, how we measure the success of that plan depends. Now, at Steve Marsden Fitness, at my gym, we have a fancy eVault 360 body scanner. It measures your weight, it measures body fat, both externally and what's called your, you've got subcutaneous fat and visceral fat. So visceral fat is the fat that is on your insides, protecting your organs. It measures muscle mass, hydration, and all sorts of things. So it's really good. I recommend people go on that every 4 weeks or so. That leaves enough time for you to change. And it's long enough that we don't sort of get messed up readings with fluctuations and things. So it's a really, really good machine. We do that. Now, if the plan is working, we keep it the same, depending on what's happening. But if it's not working, that's when we change something. And as this process goes on, as Billy learns to track, as Billy learns what foods have protein in, it just gets easier for Billy. That first bit is always the hard bit. I understand that a lot of people don't like tracking. There are different ways to do it. I like tracking as objective first measurement. However, to lose weight, we need to create a calorie deficit. And the way we do that is largely up to the individual. That's about it for diet. There is a lot of information there. I hope that I have hopefully simplified a few things, giving you a little bit of a structure that you can work toward at what I do. If you have any questions, you can email me, steve@stevemarsdenfitness.com. If you have any episode suggestions, more than happy to do something like that. But thank you so much for listening. I love you all very much. And if you need anything, give me a shout. But have an amazing day, an amazing week, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to the Normal People Fitness podcast. If you need any help, then give me a shout at www.stevemarsdenfitness.com. Have an amazing day and hopefully I'll see you soon.